She didn't even apologize after the 75-inch OLED screen shattered into a spiderweb of broken pixels, after I watched 3 years of savings and overtime shifts turn into expensive electronic garbage, after my parents stood in the living room of our house in Maple Ridge and told me it was just an old TV and I should let it go because family harmony was more important than material possessions. I stood there staring at the destruction of the television I'd worked double shifts at Henderson's Electronics to afford, listening to my mother Diane defend my 19-year-old sister Cassie's accident, while the security camera I'd installed to catch package thieves silently recorded everything from the corner bookshelf. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Victoria Chen-Rodriguez, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been told your reality doesn't matter when it conflicts with your family's favorite child? The 75-inch Samsung QLED television wasn't just a TV. It was 3 years of working every weekend at Henderson's Electronics in downtown Millerville, 3 years of skipping dinners out with friends, 3 years of buying generic groceries and wearing the same winter coat because I was saving every penny for something that would finally be mine. Not a hand-me-down from cousins, not a family purchase that belonged to everyone, but something I had earned and chosen and paid for with my own money. I was 24 years old, living at home while finishing my master's degree in computer science at Riverside University. And that television was supposed to be my reward for landing the internship at TechFlow Industries. It was supposed to be proof that hard work pays off, that being the responsible daughter who never asked for anything meant I could finally have something nice for myself. Instead, it became evidence of exactly how little my family valued anything that belonged to me. The destruction happened on a Thursday evening in October. I was upstairs in my room working on my thesis project about machine learning algorithms when I heard the crash. Not just any crash, the specific sickening sound of expensive electronics meeting hardwood floor at high velocity. I ran downstairs to find Cassie standing in the middle of our living room, surrounded by pieces of my television. The screen was completely destroyed, the frame cracked, and there was a dent in the hardwood floor where it had impacted. My beautiful, perfect television, the one I'd spent months researching, the one I'd saved for 3 years to buy, the one that had been working perfectly when I went upstairs 2 hours earlier, was completely ruined. "Oh my God," I breathed, staring at the destruction. Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Cassie looked up at me with that particular expression she'd perfected over the years, part defiance, part fake innocence, and completely unapologetic. "It was an accident," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "An accident?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "How do you accidentally destroy a mounted television?" "I was playing that new VR game Tyler brought over, and I got dizzy and fell backwards and grabbed the first thing I could reach." I looked around the living room. The TV had been mounted securely to the wall. I'd paid extra for professional installation to make sure it was safe. There were no VR controllers visible, no gaming equipment set up, nothing to suggest that anyone had been playing anything. "Where's the VR equipment?" I asked. "Tyler took it with him when he left." "When did he leave?" "Like 20 minutes ago." I pulled out my phone and called Tyler Morrison, Cassie's on-and-off boyfriend who lived 3 blocks away in the Riverside Heights subdivision. "Hey, Tyler," Tyler answered, sounding confused. "What's up?" "Tyler, were you just at our house playing VR games with Cassie?" There was a pause. "VR games? I don't have any VR equipment, and I haven't been to your house today. I'm working a double shift at the pizza place until midnight." I looked at Cassie, who was suddenly very interested in examining her fingernails. "Thanks, Tyler," I said, hanging up. "Cassie," I said slowly, "Tyler says he wasn't here today and doesn't have any VR equipment." "Well, maybe it wasn't Tyler," she snapped. "Maybe it was someone else. I don't keep track of every single person who comes and goes." That's when our parents arrived home from their weekly dinner at Romano's Italian restaurant. Mom walked in first, followed by Dad, both of them stopping short when they saw the destruction in the living room. "What happened here?" Dad asked, his voice carefully neutral in that way parents use when they're trying to assess a situation before choosing sides. "Cassie destroyed my television," I said. "It was an accident," Cassie said immediately, her voice taking on that whiny tone she used when she wanted sympathy. "I already told Victoria it was an accident. I fell and grabbed the TV to steady myself." Mom looked between us, then at the broken television, then back at Cassie. "Are you hurt, honey?" Not, "How did this happen?" or "What were you doing?" but "Are you hurt?" Because, of course, Cassie's well-being was the primary concern, not the $3,000 worth of destroyed electronics. "I'm fine," Cassie said, milking the moment. "Just a little shaken up. It was really scary." "Victoria," Mom said, turning to me, "I know you're upset about the TV, but the important thing is that Cassie wasn't injured. These things happen." "These things happen?" I repeated. "Mom, this was a $3,000 TV. I worked for 3 years to save the money for it." "I know it seems like a lot of money, sweetheart, but it was getting a little old anyway. You bought it, what, 2 years ago?" 18 months ago. And it wasn't old. It was top of the line. It was working perfectly.
"Well, accidents happen," Mom said, with a dismissive wave. "And honestly, Victoria, that TV was probably too big for this room anyway. We can help you pick out something more appropriate." The word appropriate hit me like a slap. My television was inappropriate. My choices were inappropriate. My desire to have nice things was inappropriate. "What's inappropriate about it?" I asked. "Well," Mom said, settling into her favorite armchair, "it was just so flashy, so expensive looking. What do you need with a television that big? It's not like you even watch much TV." That was true. I didn't watch much television because I was usually working or studying. But that wasn't the point. The point was that I had saved my money and chosen something I wanted and bought it with my own earnings, and now it was destroyed. "The size doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is that Cassie broke it and she needs to replace it." Cassie's eyes went wide. "Replace it? Victoria, I don't have $3,000. I'm a college student." "Then you'll have to get a job and pay me back over time." "Victoria," Dad said, his voice taking on that warning tone I knew meant I was being unreasonable. "Cassie is focusing on her studies right now. She can't work full-time and maintain her grades." "She doesn't have to work full-time. She can work part-time and pay me back gradually." "But why should she have to pay for an accident?" Mom asked. "It's not like she broke it on purpose." I stared at my mother, trying to process what she just said. "Because when you break someone else's property, even by accident, you replace it. That's how responsibility works." "Victoria," Mom said with a sigh, "you're being very harsh. Accidents happen, and punishing Cassie for an honest mistake isn't going to bring your TV back." "I'm not punishing her. I'm asking her to take responsibility for her actions." "It was an accident," Cassie repeated, her voice getting louder. "I already said I was sorry." "Actually," I said, "you haven't said you're sorry. Not once." Cassie looked genuinely surprised, like the concept of apologizing hadn't even occurred to her. "Well, I am sorry," she said, but it sounded more like she was sorry she had to say it than sorry for what she had done. Sorry doesn't replace a $3,000 television. "Victoria," Dad said firmly, "that's enough from both of you. Victoria, I understand you're upset, but this kind of attitude toward your sister is unacceptable. Cassie, I understand this was an accident, but you need to be more careful around other people's belongings." "So what's the solution?" "The solution is that we all take a step back, cool down, and have a rational conversation about this tomorrow. And in the meantime? In the meantime, nothing. The TV is broken, arguing about it won't fix it, and we'll figure out a reasonable replacement when everyone has had time to think clearly."
I looked around the living room at my family, Mom settling back into her chair like the matter was resolved, Dad straightening his newspaper like the conversation was over, and Cassie checking her phone like she was already moving on to more interesting things. None of them seemed to understand that this wasn't just about a television. This was about respect, about responsibility, about the fact that I had worked 3 years to afford something nice, and it had been destroyed in one careless moment. And everyone was acting like my desire for accountability was the real problem. "Fine," I said quietly. "Good," Dad said, sitting back down. "We'll talk about this tomorrow when everyone's calmer." But I wasn't planning to wait until tomorrow. As I walked upstairs to my room, my mind was already working through the logistics of what I needed to do next. Because here's what my family didn't know. 3 months earlier, after a series of package thefts in our neighborhood, I had installed a discrete security camera system in the main areas of our house. Motion activated, night vision capable, cloud storage backup, the works. I'd done the installation myself during a weekend when everyone was out, and I'd been very careful to place the cameras in spots where they'd be functional but not obvious. The living room camera was hidden behind a decorative plant on the corner bookshelf with a perfect view of the entire room, including the exact spot where my television had been mounted. I sat down at my computer and logged into the security system's cloud storage. The motion detection feature meant that the cameras only recorded when there was activity in the room, which saved storage space and made it easy to find specific events. I scrolled back through the timeline to Thursday evening, looking for the moment when my television was destroyed. What I found was not what I expected. The recording showed Cassie entering the living room at 6:47 p.m., about 15 minutes after I'd gone upstairs. She was alone. No Tyler, no VR equipment, no friends visiting. She walked directly to my television and stood in front of it for several minutes, just staring. Then she started talking to herself, and even though the audio was muffled, I could make out enough words to understand what she was saying. "Thinks she's so much better than everyone, always showing off, stupid expensive TV, doesn't even need something this big." She picked up the remote and started aggressively pressing buttons, cycling through channels and settings like she was looking for something to complain about. Then she started mimicking me, using an exaggerated, sarcastic voice. "Oh, look at my perfect TV that I work so hard for. I'm so responsible and mature." That's when things escalated. Cassie grabbed one of the throw pillows from the couch and hurled it at the television. It bounced off harmlessly, which seemed to frustrate her even more. She picked up another pillow and threw it harder. Then she spotted the TV remote on the coffee table, not the Samsung remote that came with the television, but the heavy, universal remote Dad used for the cable box, the one with the metal casing that weighed about 2 pounds. She picked it up, looked at it for a moment, then wound up and hurled it directly at the center of the TV screen. The impact was immediate and devastating. The screen cracked in a spiderweb pattern, then went black. But Cassie wasn't done. She grabbed the metal remote again and started hitting the TV screen repeatedly, each impact creating more damage, more cracks, more destruction. She was breathing hard, her face flushed with anger and effort. Finally, she stepped back to admire her handiwork. The television was completely destroyed, the screen shattered beyond repair. Then, that's when she seemed to realize what she'd done. Her expression shifted from satisfaction to panic as she looked around the room, probably trying to figure out how to explain this. She quickly moved the coffee table, picked up the metal remote and put it back where it belonged, then arranged some furniture to make it look like there had been some kind of accident. She even knocked over a small side table and scattered some magazines on the floor. Then she sat down on the couch and waited. 15 minutes later, I heard her scream from downstairs, a delayed, theatrical scream designed to bring me running. I watched the entire sequence 3 times, making sure I understood exactly what had happened. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't clumsiness or carelessness. This was deliberate, premeditated destruction of my property, followed by an elaborate lie designed to avoid consequences. Cassie had destroyed my television on purpose in a fit of jealousy and spite, then lied to everyone about what happened. And my parents had not only believed her lie, they'd made me feel guilty for wanting her to take responsibility. I saved multiple copies of the video file, one to my laptop's hard drive, one to an external backup drive, and one to a secure cloud storage account that only I had access to. Then I started researching my legal options, because this had just stopped being a family matter. This was destruction of property, fraud, and potentially insurance fraud if my parents tried to file a claim. In our state, intentional destruction of property worth more than $1,500 was a felony. Cassie had just committed a felony against me, lied about it to our parents, and convinced them that my desire for accountability was unreasonable. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed that nobody was watching. Tomorrow's family meeting was going to be very different than what anyone expected. Because while my family was busy protecting Cassie from the consequences of her accident, I was busy preparing to show them exactly what their precious daughter had really done. The girl who had always been told to let things go for the sake of family harmony was about to prove that some things are too important to let go. And family harmony based on lies and favoritism isn't harmony at all. It's just organized denial.
Time to break that pattern once and for all. The next morning, I woke up to find that my parents had already started damage control. Mom was in the kitchen making Cassie's favorite blueberry pancakes, the expensive organic blueberries from Whole Foods that we normally only bought for special occasions. Dad was at the dining room table with his laptop, apparently researching affordable TV options for me. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mom said brightly when I came downstairs. "I thought we could all have a nice breakfast together and then have that talk about the TV situation." Cassie was already at the table, looking perfectly refreshed and completely unbothered by the destruction she'd caused the night before. She was scrolling through her phone, occasionally showing Dad pictures of what I assumed were potential TV replacements. "Look at this one," she was saying, pointing to her screen. "It's a 50-inch Samsung and it's only $800. That's way more reasonable than what Victoria had before." $800. For a 50-inch TV to replace my 75-inch, $3,000 OLED display. The audacity was breathtaking. "That looks nice," Dad said approvingly. "Victoria, come look at this. Much more practical for a young person." I sat down at the table and glanced at Cassie's phone. The TV she was showing Dad was a basic LED model. No OLED technology, no high dynamic range, no smart features. It was the kind of television you'd find in a budget hotel room. "It's not the same quality as what I had," I said carefully. "Well, no," Mom said, setting a plate of pancakes in front of Cassie, "but it's perfectly adequate. And honestly, Victoria, maybe this is an opportunity to be a little less materialistic." There it was, my desire to replace my destroyed television with something of equivalent value was materialistic. How is wanting to replace stolen property with something of equal value materialistic? "Stolen?" Cassie's had snapped up from her phone. "Victoria, I already told you it was an accident. Stop being so dramatic." "And maybe," Dad added, "it's a chance to think about whether you really need such an expensive television. What's wrong with something simple and functional?" "There's nothing wrong with simple and functional, but there's also nothing wrong with saving money for 3 years to buy something nice for myself." "Of course not," Mom said in that patronizing tone she used when she thought I was being unreasonable. "But sometimes life teaches us lessons about attachment to material things. What lesson am I supposed to learn from Cassie destroying my property? That things can be replaced, but family relationships can't." I stared at him. "So I'm supposed to just accept that Cassie destroyed something I worked 3 years to afford, and asking her to replace it somehow damages our family relationship?" "You're making this about money when it should be about forgiveness," Mom said. "Cassie feels terrible about what happened." I looked at Cassie, who was cutting her pancakes with the air of someone who felt absolutely nothing close to terrible. "Do you feel terrible, Cassie?" She looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes she had perfected in childhood. "Of course I do. I feel awful that you're so upset." Notice what she didn't say. She didn't feel awful about breaking the TV. She felt awful that I was upset about it. The distinction was important and typical. awful enough to get a job and start paying me back? Victoria, Dad said with a warning tone, we talked about this. Cassie can't work during the school year. Her grades are too important. I worked during school. That's different. You've always been more academically self-sufficient. More academically self-sufficient. Translation, Cassie needed to focus all her energy on school because she wasn't smart enough to handle both work and classes, while I was expected to do both because I was more capable. This had been the dynamic in our family for as long as I can remember. Cassie was the baby, the one who needed protection and support and accommodation. I was the responsible one, the one who could handle whatever life threw at me, the one who didn't need special consideration. When Cassie failed her first semester at Riverside Community College, Mom and Dad hired her a private tutor and paid for her to retake the classes. When I struggled with calculus during my sophomore year, I was told to figure it out myself, maybe visit the professor's office hours or form a study group. When Cassie wanted to transfer to a 4-year university, Dad co-signed a private student loan for $40,000 without blinking. When I needed help with grad school application fees, I was told that $300 was a lot of money and maybe I should prioritize which schools I really wanted to apply to. When Cassie got a DUI last year, Dad hired a lawyer and paid the fines. The family narrative was that she'd made a mistake and learned her lesson. When I got a parking ticket on campus, I was lectured about responsibility and had to pay the $45 fine myself. The pattern was so consistent that I'd stopped noticing it until recently. Cassie's problems were family problems that required family solutions. My problems were character-building opportunities that I was expected to handle independently. What about her job at the boutique? She could pick up extra shifts there. Victoria, Mom said with exasperation, Cassie only works there a few hours a week. It's barely spending money. Then maybe she could work more hours. She can't work more hours during the school year. Her education is the priority. My education was a priority too, but I still worked to pay for things I wanted. That was your choice, Mom said. We never required you to work. This was technically true, but completely misleading. They'd never required me to work, but they'd also made it clear that if I wanted anything beyond basic necessities, I'd have to pay for it myself. Meanwhile, Cassie's basic necessities included designer clothes, expensive makeup, frequent dinners out with friends, and regular shopping trips to the mall.
Okay, I said slowly. So Cassie can't work more hours to pay me back. What's your proposed solution? Well, Dad said, we were thinking the family could split the cost of a replacement TV. Something reasonable, like that 50-inch model Cassie found. $800 divided by 4 people is only $200 each. I blinked at him. You want me to pay to replace my own television that Cassie broke? You'd be paying for a quarter of it, Mom corrected. We'd all be contributing equally. But it's my television that I already paid for with my own money. And accidents happen, Dad said. Sometimes when accidents happen, families work together to fix the situation. What about Cassie? What is she contributing to fix this situation? She's contributing her share of the replacement cost, Mom said. With what money? You just said she can't work enough hours to have real income. We'll cover her portion for now, and she can pay us back gradually when she has more time to work. I stared at them, trying to process the logic. Cassie breaks my $3,000 TV, and the family solution is for me to pay $200 toward an $800 replacement, while my parents pay $600 up front to cover Cassie's share, which she'll pay back to them at some undefined future date. So let me understand this. Cassie destroys my $3,000 television, and I end up paying $200 for the privilege of owning a cheaper replacement? You're being very negative about this, Victoria, Mom said. We're trying to find a solution that works for everyone. How does this work for me? You get a new television without having to pay the full cost yourself. I get a television that's worth a quarter of what I originally had, and I still have to pay for part of it.
Victoria, Dad said firmly, this is what's going to happen. We're going shopping for a reasonable replacement TV today. We're going to split the cost 4 ways, and we're going to put this whole situation behind us. And if I don't agree to this plan, then you don't get a replacement TV, Cassie said, speaking up for the first time in several minutes. And you can just use the one in Mom and Dad's room when you want to watch something. The casual cruelty of that statement, the suggestion that I should be grateful for occasional access to my parents' television after losing my own, was so typical of Cassie that I almost laughed. "Cassie," Mom said mildly, "that's not helpful." But she didn't say it was wrong. "You know what?" I said, standing up from the table. "I need some time to think about this." "Victoria," Dad called after me as I headed for the stairs. "We're going shopping at 2 o'clock, with or without you." I went upstairs and closed my bedroom door, then sat down at my computer. The video file from the security camera was still there, still showing exactly what had really happened in our living room, still proving that everything my family believed about this situation was a lie. But as I watched the footage again the night before, I started to notice things I'd missed. Details that made the situation even worse than I initially realized. At one point in the video, after Cassie had thrown the first pillow, she pulled out her phone and appeared to be texting someone. I couldn't see what she was typing, but she was clearly communicating with someone during her destruction of my television. Then I noticed something else. After she'd finished destroying the TV and was arranging the scene to look like an accident, she took several photos with her phone. Pictures of the damage, the scattered furniture, the broken screen. Why would someone take photos of an accident they just caused? Unless they were planning to use those photos for something. I spent the next hour thinking about Cassie's history of manipulation and lies, and a pattern started to emerge that I'd never fully recognized before. The time she borrowed my laptop for a school project and returned it with a cracked screen, she'd claimed she dropped it accidentally, but now I remember that she'd been angry with me that week because I hadn't written a paper for her sociology class. The time she accidentally spilled red wine on my favorite white dress the night before my graduation party. She'd been upset because our parents had given me a graduation gift, but hadn't given her anything for finishing her first semester at community college. The time she accidentally deleted all the photos from my camera after my trip to Europe. She'd been jealous because I'd saved money for 2 years to afford that trip, while she was stuck at home with summer school. Every accident had happened when Cassie was angry or jealous about something in my life. Every accident had destroyed something that was important to me, and every time my parents had defended her and expected me to accept the loss gracefully. This wasn't a pattern of clumsiness. This was a pattern of deliberate sabotage disguised as accidents, and my parents had been enabling it for years. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my recent calls until I found Tyler Morrison's number. If Cassie had been texting someone during her destruction of my TV, it was probably him. "Hey, Victoria," Tyler answered. "What's up?" "Tyler, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay." "Did Cassie text you yesterday evening around 7 o'clock? There was a pause. "Yeah, she did. Why? What did she say?" I don't know if I should. Tyler, this is important. Cassie destroyed my $3,000 television and she's claiming it was an accident. If she texted you, I need to know what she said." Another pause, longer this time. "Victoria, I really don't want to get in the middle of family drama." "You're already in the middle of it. She used you as an alibi, remember? She told my parents you were at our house playing VR games when the TV got broken." "She what?" Tyler's voice went up an octave. "I never said that. I told you I was working." "I know, but she's telling everyone that you were there and that's how the accident happened."
Jesus Christ, Tyler muttered. "Victoria, I swear to you, I was not at your house yesterday. I worked a double shift from noon to midnight. I have witnesses." "I believe you, but I need to know what Cassie texted you." Tyler was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "She sent me a bunch of texts around 7. First one said, 'OMG, I think I just fucked up big time.' Then she sent pictures of a broken TV and said she'd gotten so mad at Victoria that she might have done something stupid.
Then she asked me to back up her story if anyone asked. My stomach dropped. She asked you to lie for her? Yeah. She said if your parents asked, I should say I'd been at your house and we'd been playing games and there was an accident. She said Victoria was being a bitch about something and deserved to have her precious TV taken down a notch. And you agreed to this? No. I told her I wasn't lying to your parents and that she needed to tell the truth about whatever she'd done. That's when she said never mind, she'd figure something else out. I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of relief and rage. Relief that Tyler hadn't been willing to lie for her, and rage that Cassie had planned this entire cover-up from the moment she'd broken BTV. Tyler, would you be willing to show me those text messages? Victoria, I don't know. Cassie's gonna be pissed if she finds out I told you about this. Cassie committed a crime. She destroyed $3,000 worth of my property and then lied about it. Those text messages are evidence. A crime? Victoria, it's just a TV. It's just a $3,000 TV that she destroyed deliberately and then committed fraud to cover up. Tyler was quiet for a long time. Fuck, he said finally. She really did it on purpose? Yes, and I can prove it. How? I have security cameras. Oh, shit. Victoria, if you have video of what really happened, why haven't you shown your parents? Because I wanted to understand the full scope of what Cassie did before I confronted anyone. And now I do. Are you going to show them the video? Yes, but first I need those text messages from Cassie. Would you be willing to screenshot them and send them to me? Another long pause. Yeah, Tyler said finally. Yeah, I'll send them to you because this is fucked up, Victoria. I've always known Cassie could be dramatic, but this is really fucked up. Thank you, Tyler. Victoria, for what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened to you, and I'm sorry Cassie tried to drag me into her lie. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair and tried to process everything I'd learned. Cassie hadn't just destroyed my television in a moment of anger. She'd planned the cover-up in real time, taken photos of the damage, tried to recruit Tyler as an accomplice, and when that failed, she'd created an entirely fictional version of events. This wasn't just about replacing a television anymore. This was about a pattern of manipulation and abuse that had been going on for years, enabled by parents who consistently prioritized protecting Cassie over holding her accountable. My phone buzzed with incoming text messages from Tyler, screenshots of his conversation with Cassie, complete with timestamps and her photos of my destroyed television. The messages were even worse than Tyler had described. In addition to asking him to lie, Cassie had written, Victoria thinks she's so much better than everyone with her expensive shit. Maybe now she'll learn what it feels like to lose something important. She'd destroyed my television deliberately, as punishment for what she perceived as my arrogance in owning something nice. And my parents were downstairs right now preparing to take her shopping for a replacement TV that I'd be expected to help pay for. I looked at the time. It was 1:30 p.m. In 30 minutes, my family was planning to go shopping for a television to solve the situation. Time to show them what their family harmony was really costing them. I copied all the evidence, the video file, Tyler's text screenshots, photos of the damage, onto a USB drive. Then I headed downstairs to join the family meeting. Because the conversation we were about to have was going to be very different from what they expected. I walked into the living room at exactly 1:55 p.m., carrying my laptop and the USB drive containing all the evidence. My family was gathered around the coffee table, looking through printed listings of televisions Dad had found online. The mood was almost festive, like they were planning a fun family shopping trip rather than dealing with the aftermath of destroyed property. There you are, Mom said brightly. We were just looking at some options. There's a Best Buy in Riverside Plaza that has several models in your price range. My price range? Well, our price range, Dad corrected, for the family contribution to your replacement TV. Cassie, sitting cross-legged on the floor, circling TVs in the printed ads with a pink highlighter. I found 3 that would look perfect in here. Much better size for the room than that giant thing you had before. I set my laptop down on the coffee table, right on top of the TV advertisements. Before we go shopping, I said calmly, I think we need to watch something first. Victoria, Dad said with a sigh, we've already discussed this. We're moving forward with the replacement plan. There's no point in dwelling on what happened. I agree. There's no point in dwelling on lies when we can deal with the truth instead. Mom looked up from the advertisements, her expression cautious. What do you mean? I opened my laptop and navigated to the video file. I mean, I have security footage of exactly what happened to my television yesterday. The room went completely silent. Cassie's pink highlighter stopped moving. Dad set down the papers he had been holding. Mom's face went pale. Security footage? Dad asked slowly. I installed a camera system 3 months ago after the package thefts in the neighborhood. Motion-activated cameras in the main areas of the house, including the living room. Cassie's head snapped up. You've been recording us? That's like totally illegal.
Actually, it's completely legal. This is my family's house, and I have every right to install security cameras in common areas. What's illegal is destroying someone else's property and lying about it. Victoria, Mom said quickly, I don't think watching some video is going to help the situation. What's done is done. What's done is done, I agreed. But what's been lied about is about to be exposed. I clicked play on the video file. The timestamp showed 6:47 p.m. the previous evening. The footage was crystal clear, high-definition video showing the entire living room from the camera's position on the bookshelf. My family watched in stunned silence as Cassie entered the frame, alone, and walked directly to my television. They watched her stand there, talking to herself, clearly agitated. They watched her mock me with that exaggerated voice. They watched her throw the first pillow. "Turn it off," Cassie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're just getting to the good part," I replied, not taking my eyes off the screen. On the video, Cassie picked up the heavy metal remote and wound up like a baseball pitcher. "Oh my God," Mom breathed. The remote hit the TV screen with a sickening crack. But instead of stopping there, Video Cassie picked up the remote again and started beating the screen repeatedly, her face twisted with rage and satisfaction. Dad's mouth was hanging open. Mom had her hand over her heart, and Cassie was staring at the laptop screen like she was watching her own execution. "Turn it off," she said again, louder this time. "Not yet. We haven't gotten to the part where you arranged the scene to look like an accident." On screen, Cassie was moving furniture, scattering magazines, positioning everything to support her story about falling and grabbing the TV for support. Then came the part where she pulled out her phone and started texting frantically. "This is where you text Tyler Morrison to ask him to be your alibi. You remember Tyler, right? Your boyfriend who was supposedly here playing VR games when the accident happened?" Dad found his voice first. "Cassie, what the hell is this?" "I can answer that," I said before Cassie could speak. "This is premeditated destruction of property, followed by an elaborate fraud scheme to avoid consequences." I pulled out my phone and opened Tyler's text screenshots. These are the messages Cassie sent Tyler during her little tantrum. Would you like me to read them out loud? "Victoria, please," Mom said, but her voice was shaky. First message, sent at 7:03 p.m. "OMG, I think I just fucked up big time." I looked up at my parents. Note the timestamp. This was sent while she was arranging the scene to look accidental. I continued reading. Second message. "I got so mad at Victoria that I might have done something stupid." Third message. "Victoria thinks she's so much better than everyone with her expensive shit. Maybe now she'll learn what it feels like to lose something important." The silence in the room was deafening. "And then," I continued, "she asked Tyler to lie to you about being here during the accident. When he refused, she came up with the VR game story all by herself." Dad was staring at Cassie like he'd never seen her before. You did this on purpose?" Cassie's chin came up in that defiant gesture I knew so well. She had it coming.
Excuse me? Mom's voice was sharp. You heard me. Victoria thinks she's so perfect with her expensive TV and her perfect grades and her perfect job, always making the rest of us feel bad because we're not as responsible as she is. So you destroyed her television? Dad's voice was rising. It's just a stupid TV. And she was being such a bitch about it, acting like it was some kind of precious artwork or something. It's just stuff. It's $3,000 worth of stuff that she worked 3 years to afford. Mom said quietly. So what? She can afford it. She makes good money at that electronics store, and she never spends money on anything fun anyway. She'll just buy another one. I stared at my sister, amazed by her complete inability to understand what she'd done wrong. Cassie, I said carefully, do you understand that what you did is a crime? A crime? She laughed, but it sounded forced. Victoria, you're being so dramatic. It's a family matter. Destruction of property worth more than $1,500 is a felony in this state. You committed a felony against me, then committed fraud to cover it up. You're not going to call the police on your own sister, but she said that with a little uncertainty. Try me. Dad stood up and started pacing. I can't believe this. I cannot believe this. Cassie, how could you do something like this? Because she deserved it. She thinks she's better than all of us, always working and saving money and buying expensive things to show off. I bought one nice television with money I earned myself. How is that showing off? Everything you do is showing off. Your perfect grades, your perfect job, your perfect everything. You make the rest of us feel bad just by existing. The raw honesty of that statement hung in the air. This wasn't really about the television. This was about years of accumulated resentment toward me for being successful, responsible, and independent. So your solution was to destroy something I cared about? I wanted you to feel what it's like to lose something important, to see how it feels when something you care about gets taken away. Cassie, Mom said, her voice horrified. What has been taken away from you? Everything! You guys always praise Victoria for being so responsible and hardworking. You never praise me for anything. Victoria gets the good grades. Victoria gets the good job. Victoria buys the expensive stuff. What do I get?
You get your tuition paid for, I pointed out. You get your car payment covered. You get spending money every week without having to work for it. That's not the same thing. You're right. It's better. I had to earn everything I have. You get everything handed to you. That's not fair. What's not fair is destroying other people's property because you're jealous of their success. Dad stopped pacing and turned to face Cassie. I want to make sure I understand this correctly. You deliberately destroyed Victoria's television because you were angry and jealous. Then you lied to us about what happened. Then you tried to get Tyler to lie for you. Then when he refused, you made up a completely fictional story about VR games and accidents. Cassie's defiant expression was starting to crack. When you put it like that, it sounds worse than it was. How could it possibly be worse than it sounds? Mom asked. I was really mad, okay? And I wasn't thinking clearly. It wasn't like I planned it out or anything. I opened another file on my laptop. Actually, let's talk about planning. I pulled up a web browser and navigated to Cassie's Instagram account. These are posts from Cassie's social media over the past month, all complaining about how unfair it is that I have expensive stuff while she has to make do with hand-me-downs. I scrolled through several posts. My sister bought another expensive gadget while I'm stuck with a cracked phone screen. Some people get to have nice things while others have to sacrifice for family. Tired of being the responsible one who never gets rewarded. Wait, Dad said. What does that last one mean? You're not the responsible one, Cassie. Victoria is.
That's exactly my point, Cassie said. Victoria gets called responsible, but I'm the one who has to sacrifice. I can't work as much because of school, so I don't get to buy expensive stuff. I have to be grateful for whatever help I get instead of earning my own money to show off with. The twisted logic was breathtaking. In Cassie's mind, accepting financial support from our parents was sacrifice, and earning money independently was showing off. Cassie, Mom said slowly, do you understand that Victoria worked 3 jobs during college to pay for her expenses? Yeah, and she never let any of us forget it. She never mentioned it, Dad said. We found out from her professors when we went to her graduation. She didn't have to mention it. She just walked around acting all superior because she was independent while I needed help with tuition. I was starting to understand the depth of Cassie's resentment. She'd spent years watching me work and save and earn things for myself, and instead of being inspired to do the same, she'd decided that my independence was somehow an attack on her dependence. So, destroying my television was payback for my financial independence? It was payback for making me feel bad about myself. Cassie, I never said or did anything to make you feel bad. You didn't have to say anything. Just watching you be perfect all the time was enough. Mom and Dad were looking at Cassie like they'd never seen her before. The sweet, helpless daughter they'd been protecting and enabling had just revealed herself to be vindictive, entitled, and completely lacking in accountability. All right, Dad said finally, here's what's going to happen. Cassie, you're going to pay Victoria back every penny for that television. With what money? Cassie demanded. With money you're going to earn. You're getting a job, a real job, and you're going to work until you've paid back $3,000. I can't work during school. Then you'll work during winter break, spring break, and next summer, however long it takes. That's not fair. I'll miss out on everything. Fun? You should have thought about that before you committed a felony, I said. And Cassie, Mom added, you're going to apologize to Victoria, a real apology. I already said I was sorry. No, I said, you said you were sorry I was upset. That's not the same thing as apologizing for what you did. Cassie glared at me. Fine, I'm sorry I broke your stupid TV. Not good enough, Dad said. Cassie, you deliberately destroyed your sister's property in a fit of jealous rage, then lied to us about it for hours. You tried to recruit an accomplice to help you lie. You showed no remorse until you got caught. I want a real apology that acknowledges what you actually did wrong. Cassie looked around the room, probably hoping someone would rescue her from this uncomfortable moment. When no rescue came, she sighed dramatically. I'm sorry I broke your TV on purpose and lied about it. And I'm sorry I was jealous of your stuff. And I'm sorry I tried to get Tyler to lie for me. And I'm sorry for years of taking your success as a personal attack instead of being proud of my sister's accomplishments. I'm not saying that. Then you're not really sorry, Dad said. Victoria, what do you want to do about this? It was the first time in my life that my parents had asked me what I wanted instead of telling me what I should accept. I want 3 things, I said. First, I want full restitution. $3,000, not $800 for a downgrade. That's fair, Mom said. Second, I want Cassie to get a job and pay me back herself, not have you guys cover for her and let you pay you back gradually. Also fair, Dad agreed. And third, I want a written agreement stating that if Cassie destroys, damages, or borrows anything of mine again, she'll be immediately asked to move out of this house. Cassie's eyes went wide. You can't kick me out. I'm a student. Then don't destroy other people's property, I said simply. Mom, Cassie turned to her mother with tears in her eyes. You're really not going to let them kick me out over stuff? Are you? Mom looked at Cassie for a long moment. Honey, you committed a crime against your sister and lied to us about it for hours. If that's not serious enough to warrant consequences, what is? But I said I was sorry.
Being sorry doesn't undo the damage, Dad said. And frankly, Cassie, I'm not convinced you are sorry. You seem more upset about getting caught than about what you did. That's not true. Prove it, I said. Get a job, pay me back, and stop treating other people's success as a personal attack on you. Fine, Cassie stood up abruptly. Fine, I'll get a stupid job and pay you back for your stupid TV. But don't expect me to be happy about it. I don't expect you to be happy about it, I said. I expect you to learn from it. After Cassie stormed upstairs, my parents and I sat in the living room looking at each other. Victoria, Mom said finally, I owe you an apology too. For what? For not believing you, for assuming this was just an accident, for trying to pressure you into accepting a solution that wasn't fair to you. And for treating you and Cassie differently all these years, Dad added. I think we've been so focused on helping Cassie succeed that we forgot to acknowledge your successes. I don't need acknowledgement, I said. I just need fairness. You deserve both, Mom said. And you deserve better than having your property destroyed by a jealous sibling. I closed my laptop, feeling something I'd never felt before in my family. Like my perspective mattered, like my needs were being taken seriously, like I wasn't just expected to absorb whatever damage other people caused in my life. There's one more thing, I said. I'm keeping the security cameras. Of course, Dad said. Your house, your right to protect your property. And if Cassie does anything like this again... If Cassie does anything like this again, Mom said firmly, she'll be dealing with the police, not just family consequences. That evening, I researched replacement televisions online. Not the budget models my family had been pushing, but actual equivalents to what I'd lost. I found a 77-inch OLED model that was even better than my destroyed TV, with newer technology and improved features. It cost $3,200. I saved the listing and emailed it to Cassie with a simple message. This is what you're paying for. Better start job hunting. For the first time in my life, my family had chosen accountability over harmony, truth over comfort, and fairness over convenience. It felt like justice. But more than that, it felt like change. 3 days later, I came home from my internship at TechFlow Industries to find Cassie sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of job applications, looking absolutely miserable. Mom was across from her with a laptop, apparently helping her search for employment opportunities. How's the job hunt going? I asked, setting down my work bag. Cassie looked up at me with pure venom in her eyes. This is ridiculous. I applied to 12 places today, and half of them want me to work weekends or evenings. How am I supposed to keep my grades up if I'm working all the time? The same way I did, I replied calmly. Time management and prioritization. You don't understand. Your classes were easier. Computer science is way more demanding than whatever business courses you took. I almost laughed. Cassie was studying general business at community college, introductory classes that I could have passed in high school. But pointing that out would only escalate the situation. Have you gotten any callbacks yet? Mom asked, clearly trying to keep the conversation productive. 3 places want me to come in for interviews, but they're all retail jobs that pay minimum wage. At minimum wage, it'll take me like 2 years to pay Victoria back. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you destroyed a $3,000 television, I said. Cassie slammed her pen down on the table. God, Victoria, do you have to be such a bitch about everything? I already said I was sorry. Cassie, Mom said sharply, language. And Victoria has every right to expect you to pay her back quickly. You created this situation. The fact that Mom was defending me instead of automatically scolding me for provoking Cassie was still surreal. 3 days ago, I would have been the one getting lectured about keeping the peace. Whatever, Cassie muttered. I'll take one of the retail jobs, but don't expect me to be grateful about spending my entire winter break working in some crappy store. I don't expect you to be grateful, I said. I expect you to be responsible. That evening, Dad came home with news that made the situation even more interesting. I had lunch with Bill Morrison today, he announced. Bill was Tyler's father and one of Dad's longtime friends. Apparently, Tyler told his parents about what happened with the TV.
Cassie's face went pale. What did they tell them? Everything. About your text messages asking him to lie, about the real story behind the accident. Bill was pretty shocked. Tyler wasn't supposed to tell anyone else, Cassie said, her voice rising with panic. Tyler wasn't supposed to be dragged into your lie in the first place, I pointed out. Bill also mentioned something interesting. Apparently, this isn't the first time Tyler's been asked to cover for you when you've done something you shouldn't have. All eyes turned to Cassie, who was suddenly very interested in staring at her hands. What does that mean? Mom asked. According to Bill, Tyler told his parents that Cassie has asked him to lie about her whereabouts several times over the past year. Times when she was supposed to be studying, but was actually out partying. Times when she skipped classes, but told you guys she was at school. The kitchen went dead silent. Cassie? Mom said slowly. Is that true? It's not a big deal, Cassie defended herself. Everyone skips classes sometimes. How many classes have you skipped? Dad asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I don't know, a few. A few or a lot? Define a lot. Dad's jaw tightened. Cassie, your tuition for this semester was $4,000. If you've been skipping classes, you've been wasting our money. I haven't been skipping that much, and I'm still passing everything. What are your grades? Mom asked.
They're fine. What are your grades specifically? Cassie was quiet for a long moment. I have a C average. A C average? Dad's voice went up an octave. Cassie, we're paying $4,000 a semester for you to get C's? C's are passing. C's are barely passing, Mom said. And if you're skipping classes to party, that explains why your grades aren't better. I watched this conversation unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and genuine surprise. I'd known Cassie was struggling academically, but I hadn't realized she'd been lying about her attendance and performance. This changes things, Dad said grimly. Cassie, if you're not taking your education seriously, then maybe you don't need our financial support for it. What's that supposed to mean? Cassie asked, but there was fear in her voice now. It means maybe it's time for you to pay your own tuition, since you clearly don't value what we're providing. I can't pay my own tuition. I don't have that kind of money. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you started skipping classes and lying to us about it. But if I have to pay my own tuition and pay Victoria back for the TV, I'll never be able to afford anything. Welcome to being an adult, I said quietly. Cassie turned on me with fury in her eyes. This is all your fault. If you hadn't been such a vindictive bitch about that stupid TV, none of this would have happened. If you hadn't destroyed my property and lied about it, none of this would have happened, I corrected. Girls, that's enough, Mom said firmly. Cassie, you need to understand that your actions have consequences. You can't destroy other people's property, lie to your family, waste money on education you're not taking seriously, and expect everyone else to just absorb the costs of your choices. But I'm your daughter! So is Victoria, Dad pointed out, and we've been treating her like her needs don't matter for years, while bending over backwards to accommodate yours. That's not true, isn't it? Mom asked. Cassie, when was the last time we asked Victoria to compromise for your benefit? I don't know. When was the last time we asked you to compromise for Victoria's benefit? Cassie couldn't answer because the answer was never. She'd never been asked to compromise, sacrifice, or accommodate anyone else's needs. This is what's going to happen, Dad said with finality. Cassie, you're going to get a job and pay Victoria back for the television. You're going to pay your own tuition from now on. And if your grades don't improve dramatically next semester, you're going to move out and support yourself entirely. You can't kick me out. I don't have anywhere to go. Then you better start taking responsibility for your life, because we're done enabling your bad choices. That night, I was in my room working on my thesis when I heard shouting from downstairs. I went to the top of the stairs and listened.
Not fair to punish me for one mistake! Cassie was yelling. It's not one mistake. Dad's voice was firm. It's a pattern of irresponsible behavior that we've been ignoring for too long. Victoria makes mistakes too! When has Victoria ever destroyed someone else's property and lied about it? Mom asked. When has Victoria ever skipped classes that we were paying for? Dad added. When has Victoria ever asked someone to lie to cover up her bad behavior? That's different. Victoria's perfect. She never does anything wrong. Victoria's not perfect, but she takes responsibility for her actions. When she makes mistakes, she fixes them herself instead of expecting other people to clean up after her. So you love her more than me. We love you both, Mom said, but love doesn't mean protecting you from the consequences of your choices. Fine, Cassie screamed. Fine, I'll get your stupid job and pay for everything myself, but don't expect me to be grateful for any of this. I heard her stomping up the stairs, then her bedroom door slamming hard enough to shake the walls. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock on my door. Come in, I called. Mom peeked her head in. Can we talk? Of course. She came in and sat on my desk chair while I sat on my bed. Victoria, I owe you an apology. Not just about the TV situation, but about everything. Your father and I have been doing Cassie a disservice by protecting her from consequences, and we've been doing you a disservice by expecting you to be the responsible one all the time. It's okay, Mom. No, it's not okay. We created this dynamic where Cassie never had to grow up because we were always there to fix her problems, and you had to grow up too fast because we expected you to handle everything yourself. I thought about that. It was true. I'd been taking care of myself in ways that most college students didn't have to, while Cassie had been sheltered from adult responsibilities well into her late teens. I think, Mom continued, we were so worried about Cassie failing that we forgot to celebrate your successes, and that's not fair to you. I never needed celebration. I just needed fairness. You deserved both, and from now on, you're going to get both. Over the next few weeks, the changes in our family dynamics were dramatic. Cassie got a job at a clothing store in Riverside Plaza Mall, working 25 hours a week around her class schedule. She hated every minute of it, but she was making steady payments towards what she owed me. More importantly, her attitude started to shift. Not because she suddenly became grateful or apologetic, but because for the first time in her life, she was experiencing real consequences for her actions. When she complained about being tired from work, Mom didn't offer to help with her expenses so she could work less. When she struggled to balance work and school, Dad didn't offer to pay her tuition so she could focus on studies. When she made mistakes at her job and got written up by her manager, our parents didn't call to complain about how she was being treated.
For the first time in Cassie's life, she was dealing with the real world without a family safety net. And I was experiencing something I'd never had before. A family that treated my needs as legitimate and my boundaries as non-negotiable. 6 weeks after the TV incident, I came home to find a large box waiting by the front door. My new television had arrived, the 77-inch OLED model that was even better than what Cassie had destroyed. I was setting it up in the living room when Cassie came home from work, exhausted and frustrated from a difficult shift. She stopped in the doorway and stared at the new TV. It's bigger than your old one, she said quietly. Yes, it is. And probably more expensive. Yes, it was. She was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, she said finally. Really sorry. Not just about breaking your TV, but about everything. About being jealous of you, about trying to make you feel bad for being successful, about lying to everyone. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. She was thinner than she'd been 6 weeks ago, tired from working and studying simultaneously for the first time in her life. Her hands were rougher from retail work, her clothes less perfect because she couldn't afford constant shopping trips. But she also looked more real somehow, more like an actual person instead of a spoiled character playing at being an adult. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, she continued. I know I've been really awful. To you, to mom and dad, to Tyler. I don't know why I thought destroying your stuff would make me feel better about myself. Did it? No. It made me feel worse. And watching you handle all of this with so much dignity while I've been acting like a spoiled brat, it made me realize how much growing up I need to do. It's not too late to start. I know, and I am starting. I'm actually doing okay in my classes this semester, and my manager at work said I might get promoted to shift supervisor if I keep improving. That's great, Cassie. I have a long way to go to pay you back completely, but I'm going to do it. Every penny. I know you will. And I did know, because for the first time in her life, Cassie was learning that actions have consequences, that other people's needs matter, and that growing up means taking responsibility for your mistakes. It had taken the destruction of a television and a family crisis to get there, but finally, at 19 years old, my sister was learning how to be an adult. And I was learning what it felt like to have a family that valued fairness over false harmony. It turned out that was worth more than any television ever could be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.